Hey gamers, Jarenzo10 here. I would like to inform all of the 12 people probably watching this that I have beaten Cuphead on June 9th, 2022. Yeah, you know, that really hard game that's supposedly the Dark Souls of run and gun platformers. Yeah, that one. Anyway, after making this very important achievement, I now have the authority to rank each and every boss in whatever order I'd like. So today, I'm going to be ranking every boss in Cuphead regular mode only, from easiest to hardest. I'll be including every phase of a fight together, including the King Dice Gauntlet. That leaves us with 19 bosses. And remember, this is all my opinion. Maybe once I amass a large enough following, I'll do the same thing, but with votes from the fans. Without any further ado, let's get into the ranking. Easiest boss could come down to either of two bosses, the Root Pack or Goopy Le Grande. I chose Goopy Le Grande for my pick. This is because his fight is A, easily completable, B, in under a minute, C, with any combination of weapons and super arts. The only thing that I say you really need for this fight is the Smoke Bomb charm, in case he gets you cornered, but even then you can just run away in most cases. If you crouch when he does his face headbutt and or his punch, then you're all good. The second easiest should be about as easy to guess as it is to beat. And considering this is a boss I got an A+ on while recording without even trying, you should know that the Root Pack is close to tied with Goopy for the easiest boss. The first phase is perhaps the easiest thing in the game, period. Imagine the Yellow Devil fight from Mega Man, but slow as heck and the blobs only appear from one place, so there's not even a pattern to memorize. Plus, you can parry some of the blobs and use them to your advantage. The second phase can be skipped at the cost of making the next phase 1% harder, or just demolished with Super Art 1 and plus a bit of shooting. And the last phase just needs the Smoke Bomb to dash through some eye lasers from a carrot. We can move on to the next one now. Now, this one may come as a bit of a surprise, but I'm ranking Incarnation as the third easiest boss in Cuphead. He's definitely a major step up in difficulty from the previous two bosses, but there's still a reason you have the option to fight him as your first boss. Just make sure you know not to touch his hands, look for the tells on his attacks, and stay on the middle platform so you can jump in any direction at a moment's notice. Also, use the auto parry charm. Trust me, you'll need it. After the first three, the next easiest bosses become a bit more of a debate, and this is likely where you'll start to disagree more and more with me. My pick for the next boss is Ribbi and Croaks from Clip Joint Calamity. For this fight, just make sure you get a lot of parries in the first phase, usually with the auto parry charm, use the roundabout weapon in the second phase, and hope you don't get the tigers in the third phase. And even if you do get the tigers, just dash between the balls. For the fifth I can't speak English. For the fifth easiest boss, we get Werner Vermin, a German military rat. He's my favorite boss, but he seriously lacks challenge, except maybe in the second phase. Just use the roundabout and spread, the two best weapons in the game, interchangeably, and you'll win. Now we get into the not actually easy but not too hard bosses, starting with Baroness von Bonbon from Sugarland Shimmy. The difficult part here is that the first three phases are just RNG in terms of who you have to fight. You could be lucky and fight the Jawbreaker. You could get meta results and fight the Candy Corn, Gum Dispenser, or the Waffle. Or you could be cursed by the RNG Devil and have to fight the stupid freaking Muffin. After that, you fight the Baroness herself, plus the Monster Candy Castle thing. It's kinda hard, but only because of how long Bonbon's multiple heads linger on the screen. If you could just shoot them out of the sky, this would likely be switched with Ribbi and Croaks. Overall, I rate this boss I will never eat a muffin. This next pick would start a fight in the comments if I ever got comments on my videos. I'm going to say it. Beppy the Clown is not a difficult boss. Don't get me wrong, I had my fair share of difficulty beating him on my first attempt, and my friend Java Jaja still can't beat him. But those both have perfectly reasonable explanations. One, pretty much everyone has trouble with the bosses on their first attempt. You have to learn boss patterns to beat them. That's the whole point of the game. Two, Java Jaja doesn't care about Cuphead and barely plays it. Beppy is easy if you know what charms and weapons to use. This next one I have to put here, as he's arguably one of the easiest bosses in World 3, Captain Brinybeard. Laugh at my funny joke, I demanded. Anyway, Brinybeard relies less on wacky transformations and multiple phases for his fight. He instead opts to only use 2 phases and continually add more attacks into the mix as you throw more and more finger bullets directly into his face. After Brinybeard has been thoroughly beaten up, his boat decides it's had enough and decides to start shooting lasers of its own at you. Don't get me wrong, definitely a challenging fight, but this game gets much, much harder. Next, we have the easiest of the airplane fights, and considering it's actually closer to the middle of the list than anything, that should say a lot about airplane fights in general. Anyway, I'm of course talking about Hilda, the Zeppelin that I'd like to fill with lead. If you didn't get the joke, that's okay, I stole it from another Cuphead video that someone else made that I forgot about anyway. Regardless of my terrible jokes, Hilda has quite a long boss fight, as do most airplane fights. Her first phase is quite easy, though short. After that, she becomes Taurus. However, before this, she appears from the left edge of the screen, and you wouldn't know that unless you got hit by it. That's really some bull crap right there. Get it? Because Taurus? Laugh. After surviving that phase, she becomes some other constellations. The Gemini phase, where I almost feel like I'm seeing double. Oh, I cracked myself up. And the Sagittarius phase, which I don't even have a stupid pun for. After Hilda realizes that zodiac signs are bad battle strategies, she becomes a freaking moon that shoots UFOs and has gears in her neck. I don't know, man. Cuphead is weird. After Hilda, we have the second of two human bosses on this list, and the harder of the two, that being Sally's Stagefleet. What is there to say about this fight? The music is mediocre, the fight is forgettable, and it's a relatively easy-ish boss. Next, we have the second easiest airplane fight, Wally Warbles. A lot of people say this fight is really hard, and to that I say they're probably playing on expert mode. Like, there are a crap ton of bosses way harder than this. And that includes our next entrant, the Phantom Express. This consists of a ghost with a really cool design, Papyrus from Undertale, 2 lollipop guys, and a sentient train. Now, if this boss were on flat ground, it would be among the easiest bosses in the game, probably in the top 5 easiest. However, the fight's main gimmick is what you're standing on. A small cart with wheels that you need to parry to adjust the speed of. In addition, objects fall from the sky that can move the platform in directions you definitely don't want it to. Overall, definitely an interesting fight. I don't really have a funny intro for this guy, so I'm just gonna say it. The next entry is Jimmy the Great. This is one of 2 bosses I heard were some of the hardest in the game before beating them in about 2 hours, not much by my standards. Jimmy is another airplane boss, which automatically makes this fight longer and more difficult because logic. Overall though, just use the bombs and don't be afraid to use a super or EX when necessary. Alright, the moment you've probably all been waiting for. The not hardest boss in Cuphead. The final boss, the literal devil. Yeah, compared to the next 5 bosses, even the devil is an absolute pushover in this game. Remember when I said I beat him on June 9th, 2022? Well, I beat the penultimate boss, King Dice, on June 8th. Literally the day before. When a boss is that easy to figure out the pattern of, you know they're easy, for a final boss at least. The hardest part is when one of the purple guys is placed in an unfair spot during his serpent attack in the first phase. Starting off the top 5 hardest bosses, we have the other one of the bosses I heard was one of the hardest before I beat them a little faster than I expected, Rumor Honeybottoms. Rumor's first phase is really easy, just alternate between the chaser and lobber depending on the situation. Her next phase, while quite difficult, is actually a great way to get an achievement, specifically the one for getting 5 parries in a row without touching solid ground. Rumor's final phase is the really hard part. The buzzsaw takes up a lot of room on the screen and... Oh, buzzsaw. Because she's a bee. Was that intentional? For number 4 on the list, we have a boss widely regarded as the most difficult, Grim Matchstick. Grim is certainly a hard boss, but for me the most difficult part is using EXs and supers correctly to get an A rank. The first phase is easy. For the second phase, just move around a lot and you'll dodge his fiery balls. The third is what's really hard for me. I can never decide whether to use Super Art 1 or 2. If I try to use 1, I'll usually die immediately. And if I try to use 2, I just die a bit slower. It's only when I have 3 full HP coming into the third phase when I can beat the fight, only to end up getting a B+. Number 3 should be quite an obvious pick. When I said I'd be grouping all phases of a fight together, we all knew exactly why. The third hardest boss in Cuphead has to be the King Dice Gauntlet. This fight, let me give you a rundown. You immediately notice a parryable die that advances you in some sort of board game. The board game consists of you fighting some bosses, obtaining some extra HP along the way. There are 10 bosses in total, including King Dice himself. Now, 8 of the 10 are actually pretty easy. The actual phase where you fight King Dice himself is difficult but manageable if you have enough HP. The problem, though, is one of the mini-bosses, the dreaded monkey, Mr. Chimes. Let me tell you, I despise this ape. First, you have to play a memory game. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a fair amount of functioning brain cells, but when I use them playing a video game, it should be to figure out the right weapon combination for a fight, or to get collectibles for a non-mandatory ending, not to play a memory game in airplane mode while avoiding a stupid monkey. Once you get a match between two cards, the monkey becomes vulnerable to your attacks for a seemingly random amount of time. One itty-bitty problem, he can be on the left side of you. Since you can't attack in any direction but straight forwards while in airplane mode, guess what? You're at the RNG's mercy. Overall, a great fight and a great penultimate boss, but I hate that stupid monkey. Number 2 is widely regarded as being at the very least the third hardest boss in Cuphead. The mechanical mad lad himself, Dr. Call's robot. And yes, by revealing the second hardest boss, I'm automatically revealing the most difficult, but stick around anyway. Please. So, Dr. Call's robot. His first phase always has 3 attacks coming towards you at once. Make sure the coffee charm is equipped. Use the airplane gun thing on the head laser, then once you get close, switch to bombs. When he fires a laser, go down and attack the belly thing with bombs. Once you've destroyed both, break the circle on his chest. Eventually, he should expose his cardiovascular organs, which, if you use the coffee charm and parried all the telly wannabes you saw, you can use a super on. Sounds easy, right? Well, it's not. For the second phase, use bombs and hope your super meter fills up before you blow his head out of the sky. During the transition to the third phase, use bombs rapidly, and right before he starts attacking with his Chaos Emerald, use your super. Then stay away from him and focus only on your character, as you begin to realize you're actually playing Undertale. Overall, definitely a hard fight. And now, the moment most of you have been waiting for. The number 1 most difficult boss in Cuphead is, in my opinion, the second wall in the tutorial stage. Nah, I'm kidding. It's Calla Maria from High Seas Hijinks. Ooh, boy. The first phase has like 6 attacks, some of which can overlap. Aw, what's the matter? Got the pirate ghost and the seahorse at the same time? Aw, boy, what a shame. If you beat the first phase, and I mean if, you get to watch Khaled get bitten by electric eels and turn into a gorgon. But now she can freeze you in place as multiple electrified bullets come at you. Yes, you can avoid being frozen, but just barely, and it takes up more time than actually breaking out of the freeze. If by some chance you manage to make it to the final phase, then you're in for a treat. You now have much less room to work with, since the ceiling and floor are covered in little coral spike things. In addition, you can't avoid being frozen anymore. You instead have to strategically choose when and where to get frozen in order to avoid spiky coral and little skull bubble things. And if by some chance you manage to rack up enough damage on Calla before getting a coral spike to the face, congratulations. You have beaten the hardest boss in Cuphead. And that's my list. Are you all having fun with the DLC? I know I am. But anyways, be sure to leave a like and comment if your opinions are different than mine. Your opinions are always valid unless you dislike Cuphead because of its difficulty. And with that, this is Jarenzo10 signing off. See? About perspectives. Right now, this will be in Films or Transfers Sahara, Nathan Errol. Wait, if you're from Bears or an area, no other folks are about to spell Phoenix. Speaking, thank you for the. We know the deal our boys got. Sir, correct, the fuck was me in the same moment. Wait, if Scadam to a pair of scale next, they go eat it.